I am the superintendent of the South Central Ohio Educational Service Center. Ohio used to have what they call county offices or county boards of education. Those have now evolved into educational service centers, providing services throughout multiple counties in some cases. And I presently have contracts with 39 different districts here in southeastern Ohio.
Okay.
So we basically provide services to local school districts.
So you actually, the work you do extends beyond Scioto County?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yes. A lot of the work, the majority of the work is within Scioto County.
Okay.
But I extend out actually to 5 other counties at this point.
Okay. The adjoining counties?
Yes.
Gallia?
Yes. Not Gallia. Basically Pike, Ross, Lawrence, Scioto counties, and we're moving into and Jackson County.
Okay. Okay. Wow. That sounds like a lot of work.
It is, but it's good work.
So what's a typical day like for you?
Very much varied because of the range of services that we provide. We provide everything from curriculum services all the way to occupational therapy, speech therapy. I run all the special education units, hearing impaired, visually impaired. I provide speech therapy. Basically any of the special needs that districts have or areas where they do not have personnel in, we contract services with them. And basically we're a contracting agency at this point. The state is diminishing the money they provide us each year because basically have directed us to become market-based and basically to provide quality services for the schools or close your doors. And so basically it's a total shift from what the old county offices used to be to now basically providing quality services to the individual districts.
Sounds like an improvement.
Yes, really it sounds harsh in a way that they're cutting off all our money, but basically the philosophy is sound. The philosophy is that you provide quality service at a reasonable rate, or you close your doors, and I think that's what this nation's always been about, is providing quality services at a reasonable price to maintain your base and to do that. So I think my board has readjusted to that, and the only thing is I didn't realize when I took the job that 50% of my job would be in sales. But that's new for a school superintendent.
So you're a sales marketing man.
I'm a sales marketing guy for educational services, which after many of 33 years in the superintendency, it was somewhat of a shift.
So you've been in public education all your career?
Yes, 40-some years.
Okay.
Yes.
So you've seen some big changes?
Very much so, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, yes.
And so I want to have a conversation with you about type 2 diabetes, which is kind of not necessarily related to what you do, but perhaps very related in some ways. My first question to you would be, if you hear the word diabetes, what comes to your mind?
Sugar. And of course, and in all fairness too, I should tell you, my wife has the problem. But also we recognize in the schools that problem exists. The obesity. And Ohio finally, over the last, probably over the last 5 to 10 years, is becoming a goal to start addressing more of the health needs of students. Of course, all we hear all the time are test scores and academic improvement and those type things. But the health issues now with the mass body index screenings, the diabetics, the obesity problem we're having, they're beginning to come forward. And seems like there is some concerns that these problems are going to have to be addressed. And of course, the schools are usually the natural vehicle where those things come about, and usually we're the first to say, okay, we've got to start doing these things.
Right.
So it usually falls back to the schools to start moving to correct usually any problems that society has. course, that's more burden on the schools too. It seems like sometimes we're taking more and more of the parent responsibilities, and that is bothersome to some of the school people, because on one side we're being pushed on the academic test side, quality of education, and then it seems like we're picking up more of society's problems and those type problems on the other side too.
Yeah. So you are seeing more children that are overweight and
Oh yes. Oh yes, I think that's and especially, and as you're aware, we're in Appalachia, and the poverty level has to contribute to that a great deal. Their diets are not what we would experience. I've often said that many times, leaving my school every day, and that the best meal the kids got that day was probably at school, and so the poverty contributes, or I feel contributes to a large part of that problem also.
So let's talk about a couple things in the school itself.
Okay.
And so there's all kinds of discussion these days about school lunches and the adequacy and nutritional value. What's your impression of the lunches that you see kids being served?
The problem, one of the problems I see, could school lunches be better? Absolutely. There's no question, I think, about that. Where you get into the problem is providing the quality school lunch at the price that the district can afford and that the students can afford. The government commodities that come in, because in high poverty schools they rely a great deal on commodities, and therefore when those commodities come in, that becomes a staple part of the meals. Daily, and as we all know, food costs continue to increase, but definitely that is a vehicle that and I think that's changing, and the legislature is passing more guidelines now and the federal on exactly what should be in those school lunches, and that's good. Of course, the soda pop is always a problem. The amount in consumptions, and everywhere we turn we see those machines. So, but could the meals be better? Most definitely. There's always a cost factor, and unfortunately that cost factor comes into play sometimes too.
So some communities are taking what they're calling a locavore perspective. I don't know if you've heard that term or not, but it's buying locally. So, trying to help the local economy by encouraging local farmers to grow, and then actually buying that produce and using it. Is that something that's happening here?
No, I have not heard of that happening here. And of course, you would have to remember, if that took place, of course, most of your growing's in the summer months when you're not in session.
Yeah.
But no, that's a concept that I've not heard of. And I don't think anyone in our area is doing that at this point. And that's what I said, it goes back to financing the cafeteria, and most of the food is bought through the distribution food warehouses that come in, and it's a blend of that and, of course, the federal commodities that are shipped in.
I think up around Athens, around Ohio University, they are.
I could see that around the university campus where you would have more people. And again, as you know, and since you've traveled, different areas are different. And for sure, I could see that there. And it's the same thing with, in some areas, organic. You can almost go into a department store and tell the type of society around by the size of the organic section in the department store versus going into a regular department store.
Right.
And it's marketing for them too.
Sure.
So you can always have a sense even of a community sometime by going through a grocery store of what's being purchased and what that area seems to like better than another area.
You mentioned vending machines. Has there been any attempts in the schools to?
Oh, absolutely. They where vending machines during the lunch hours, they're unplugged. And again, the state stepping in and passing regulations on those machines and when those machines can be used and not. We've seen over the last few years, of course, the water, a much better selection of what's in those vending machines. The fruit juices, the waters, and those type things are now in the machines, as well as if they do have the soda machines or the pop machines in it also.
some places are actually doing some pricing so that the healthier items cost less.
That makes good sense.
You know,
yes.
So that people are, it gives the kids the option to think, okay, I'll get this, but I'll save a little money by doing this. The other concern I always am hearing is, you know, it has to do with physical education and the ability of kids to actually get active during the school day. What's happening here that you see?
I guess I'm hesitating because actually we've probably seen less. Again, going back, we went through that period, especially 15 or 20 years ago. Again, going back to test scores and the emphasis on the academics, all of a sudden you saw schools dropping recesses to provide more academic time within the school day, and that. Now in physical education, of course it's still there, but we're starting to see things, especially with Ohio. They have the credit flexibility plan now, where students do not actually have to have seat time in the classrooms. We have some schools now granting credit if they're athletes. Instead of going into a physical education class, they can petition that they're going to spend X hours on the practice field and in games to meet the physical education requirement. But the physical education in the high school is still there within the high schools. Is it emphasized more than it used to be? No. Should it probably be? Yes. Especially with the obesity and those type things. The whole thrust now is, in this particular career, and all the years I've been through it, and I've seen this happen so many times, I think the problem now is just being recognized. But has anyone come out with a game plan or a solid foundation direction of what they should be doing, whether that should be at a certain point these kids should be in a special type class? I have not seen that develop at this point. I'm sure if the trend continues, it will come. It'll have to come at some point, I think, because as you know and I know, we can talk about problems so long, but if you're going to change something, you better get a program in place. And so I think actually to change all these habits, we can talk about it all day, but someone's got to put a game plan together and initiate and take that first step forward to do that. We do have a couple of schools currently participating in a statewide health grant. Manchester Local, not Scioto County, that's one of my schools in Adams County, is doing that now, and they're experimenting with better healthy choices and going through an entire new program at that point. I think after those, there are several of those pilot programs going on right now, and I think once those are completed, I think we'll hopefully see more schools start to pick that up. But then it comes back again to time. You know, who's going to say what's most important here today? Getting 30 more minutes of English or addressing the obesity problem?
Well, and there is a body of research that demonstrates that more active children that have better nutrition
they do better in school. No question.
Better scores and better test scores.
And that's what brought about our breakfast program. And I don't think anyone argues with that. But then it comes back to how are you going to address the health issues and having that game plan together.
So the decision on what occurs in given classrooms, is that pretty much up to the individual teachers?
Used to be, not now. Now, and there has been such an emphasis on the testing, and just the last budget passed in Ohio is going to rate every school in the state of Ohio top to bottom. Now, what's a school administrator to think right off? I'm going to be rated strictly on the test scores of my students. So where is the emphasis? The emphasis is going to be in the core subjects that's being tested on the academic side. So that's what I said. The other things sort of get left behind. And if we can fit them in, fine. And if we can't, that's fine too, because the emphasis is on the test score. Right now in Ohio, the test scores are everything. And all those other issues we talk about.
Yeah.
And we recognize a need, but there's no game plan in place.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been interested in personally for a long time is how do we get more involvement from parents, for one thing, and the second thing, we have a growing, and we're going to have in this next decade, in this coming decade, we're going to have a growing number of older folks retiring. All those baby boomers are retiring, and not necessarily wanting to quit. They maybe want to retire from the job they were doing, but could be a wonderful source of volunteers that we've never had, a whole core of volunteers we've never had before. So I just wondered if you had any ideas about how to better involve parents, and if there is any forward thinking about this sort of cadre of potential volunteers that might be enlisted to participate.
I'd like to speak to parents first.
Sure.
And I will tell you, Scioto County is very unique in a plan that's going on right now in the state of Ohio. Approximately 3 years ago, my districts were fortunate enough to be offered public preschool classrooms, and because of the poverty level. And we came together and organized a consortium here in Scioto County for 3- and 4-year-olds to establish classrooms. I'm personally one of those that also is a big believer that the earlier we engage them, I think we're missing some important years. So we took it upon ourselves, DSC, to bring together 20-some classrooms, 2 in each of the districts, to develop them. A key component of that was parents, because I'm a believer too that we must involve parents more and more. And I think that goes back to my earlier comment when I said sometimes we take on the parent responsibilities, and we shouldn't be doing that, but maybe we need to start educating the parents with the children. And also we have so many parents that fear the schools, in the sense it's sort of like they really don't know how to approach the schools or blend in well with the schools. So one of our goals was, after we started this and come together as a unit, we meet 4 times a year, and we do. And one of the big things was, and I developed a home visitation workshop. So our goal is that all of my teachers in those preschool classrooms will be at least 2 times in the homes of the kids a year. And also we started what we call a family and civic engagement, where we're going out now, kids, problem children, and kids that aren't functioning well in school, and trying to bring the parents in more. And that is the key element. We must get more parent involvement within the schools as we go. So those factors have really made a change. And Scioto County is a model for Ohio now. I think right now over 70% of my 3- and 4-year-olds are enrolled in some type of education. We also brought in even the for-profits. The daycares are in my organization, because we thought, and community action is in, because they have 400 of the kids. So this unity is just not the schools. This is across the board coalition of private providers, community action organizations with Head Start, the public school, Shawnee State University, the technical school. All of us come together. Presently we're setting up dental programs, free dental care for all these kids through the CAO clinic. We're trying to get that set up for Fridays just for dental health now. But as far as bringing the parents in, we think that's of extreme importance. And that is our goal. And we work, as a matter of fact, this morning I was working on my visitation schedule. They have to report to me. I report back to all their superintendents. They've completed their work in meeting these visitation schedules, plus the school conferences, etc. Now, that is a key part. The volunteers, most of the schools have volunteers. Could they probably have more volunteers? Possibly. And sadly, again, it goes back to the academic section, where at what point is it best to use volunteers? but there's definitely a source there. How effectively districts use them will vary greatly from one district to another. But there's no question that the baby boomers, they are a source there. And but it's an untapped source. I would agree with you. If that's what you're implying, I definitely agree to you. It's an untapped source.
Yeah, I think that it has great potential.
It does. Has super potential.
And one other area I'd like to ask you about is, because, you know, when I talk to people, they usually say, well, in rural places, the school's one of the biggest employers, you know, in the county. And so I was wondering what you might be doing or thinking in regard to employee wellness. Actually,
Scioto County is unique in that too. We're totally self-funded. We have our own insurance consortium, and that's ruled through a council of governments. The superintendent is actually the council. We are just starting, and again, wellness programs, and actually we are now talking discounts for, and we have 2 schools doing that now, that participate in wellness programs, and the schools even buy the monitors, the walking monitors. So that is a major push now, of course, a part of the Obama health plan, and everyone is pushing those wellness programs anyway. And of course, that's the expectations of the consortium now too. So that is a major push at this point, is the wellness program. I don't think it's the point. We also have, through our self-funded organization, wellness plans. Anyone that has sugar, heart problems, we enroll them in a plan. They receive monthly information and pamphlets on what they should and should not be doing with those. And that is something, and I've only seen that come about the last year, but it's being pushed. And I don't know, probably a lot of it's because of the rising cost of health too. Because it is, it's like I said, as a superintendent all these years and still today, the one cost I never have a control over is health costs. I can do a budget, but when it comes due at the end of the year and they say it goes up X dollars, you don't have any choice, nor do you have any way to predict what it's going to be. So it is the one cost that is now trying to be managed at a much better level than it used to be.
Well, I appreciate knowing that. You know, when you first kind of share with me what you do, you mentioned a number of special children's need areas that you work on, speech and so I'm just kind of wondering whether this high risk, you know, having diabetes isn't like being blind or not having hearing. You know, you might not think of it quite the same way, yet at the same time, a child that's you know, 20-30% over their normal weight is at risk very young for high blood pressure, for strokes, and then of course heart disease and diabetes as well. So I'm wondering if there's any discussion within the school system about this focus, that there needs to be a focus on perhaps prevention, as opposed to child has a problem, we're going to deal with this special problem they have, but saying here's a group of students that really are high risk for really expensive problems for their own quality of life and society's cost as well. If there's any emphasis at all on thinking about that yet.
If you go to the nurses and they go to their meetings, there's an emphasis. If you ask me, is that emphasized at this time within the schools, my answer would be no. Again, going back to a point of priorities of what they can and cannot address, and the time element of having those things addressed. And that's why it's like I said with the obesity now, and we all watch the evening news. And how many nights can I go through the evening news and not hear about the health problem? So I feel it's in the talking stage, but at some point, some program must be developed, and it's not here yet. Not that I have seen. Now, is the need there? I don't think anyone would deny that the need's not there. It's a matter of who's going to put the plan together, how's it going to be mandated, is the state legislature going to pass it, and when those things come up, and if you know much about government, and I'm sure you do, it becomes a political animal.
Yeah.
And my schools are saying, look, they just froze my budget in special ed at 2009 levels, and you're telling me I'm going to take on a health program out of my pocket? So, in other words, it's a balance of priorities, finances, and those type things.
Yeah.
But as far as the need, there's no question.
Yeah.
The need's there. It's just a matter of when it's going to become a high enough priority for someone to address the problem and finance the problem.
Yeah.
But now, where is that? Yes, I hear that all the time on the national news. And if I bring I do bring my nurses, counselors in from all the schools at different times of the year to talk to them about what they're seeing. Do they need assistance with anything? And when you get those select groups, that's the only time I hear about those problems. So it seems like it's still in the stage of everyone recognizes there a problem, but no one's really willing at this time, as we say in Southern I, take the bull by the horns and get a plan together and get it moving.
Yeah. In the county, are there coordinated school health councils? Is that something that you're seeing instituted?
No. There is, like I said, there's the call, the Council of Governments. And we have, like I said, now we, of course, hire our third-party administrators and our health plans, which is MMO. And we're running our basic health awareness and those type things through MMO, Medical Mutual of Ohio. But as far as individual health committees, there is, I take it back, there is one or two in those schools I was telling you about that have started the physical fitness, after school exercising. They have little committees. Now, I don't know how well they're organized, but they get together and basically plan the activities they're going to do, whether Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday they're going to be in the gym walking 3 miles or whatever. But how formal those committees are at this point, I'm really not for sure.
Yeah, there were some guidelines came out several years ago for the state, for schools to move towards developing these councils. And I know they had quite a battle up around Athens and getting it started, but they've slowly moved into that, and it's beginning to take effect. But it's taken 5, 6, 7 years, to begin to see the fruits of that labor.
It takes a while.
Yeah, you got to plant the seeds and water a long time.
And that's why, yeah.
Well, I think you've answered all my questions, and
Okay.
I just wonder if there's anything else you'd like to add before we conclude.
No, but I would tell you, I think everyone recognizes the concerns, and it's just a matter of at some point they need to be addressed. But unfortunately, like I said, sometimes it's just tied too much to money and time.
What would you say to parents at this point?
Parents need to do a much better job, just as with their children, and we try to counsel parents, and my health nurse, I say my health nurse, but the health nurses, basically, I know they talk to their parents, because we have teenagers with high blood pressure. We have a lot of kids with sugar. And the thing is trying, at this point, the best contact for those things right now is the parent. The nurses do talk and work with those parents, but it's difficult in a high poverty area, especially when we have so many single parent homes. That makes it that much more difficult. The poverty level, the amount of money, everyone, you talk to them, but when you say, well, you need to buy this food and that food, and they say, I can't afford to buy this, and this, and there's not much you can say then, but undoubtedly the problem's there. It's just how it's going to be addressed, I think.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
No problem.